why fast English feels impossible. Have you ever had this strange experience? You are watching an English movie, listening to a podcast, or talking to a native speaker, and everything seems to be going well for the first few seconds. You recognize a few familiar words, and you feel confident because you have studied English for months or even years. Then suddenly, everything becomes a blur. The speaker continues talking, but the words seem to melt together into one long sound. You stop understanding. Your mind freezes, and before you can catch up, the conversation is already over. If this has ever happened to you, I want you to know something very important. You are not alone, and there is nothing wrong with your intelligence. In fact, millions of English learners around the world experience exactly the same problem every single day. Even students who know thousands of English words often struggle when they hear natural conversations. Many people believe that the solution is simple. They think, I just need to memorize more vocabulary, so they spend hours learning new words every week. They fill notebooks with long vocabulary lists, use flashcards, and practice spelling. A few months later, they know many more words than before. But when they watch a movie or listen to native speakers again, they still feel lost. Why does this happen? The answer may surprise you. The problem is usually not your vocabulary. The problem is how your brain is trying to process English. Imagine that someone says this sentence. Would you like to grab a cup of coffee after work? Your brain hears the first word, would. Then it starts searching for the meaning. Before you finish thinking about that word, the speaker has already said, you like to, while your brain is still translating those words into your native language. The speaker continues with, grab a cup of coffee, and finally finishes with, after work. By the time you understand the beginning of the sentence, the ending has already disappeared. It feels as if you are trying to read a book while someone keeps turning the pages faster than you can read them. This is exactly how many English learners listen. They don't listen to understand. They listen to translate. And translating every single word is simply too slow. Think about your own language for a moment. When your best friend says something to you, do you translate every word in your head? Of course not. You immediately understand the idea because your brain recognizes the entire message at once. Native English speakers do exactly the same thing. They are not thinking about grammar rules while they speak. They are not choosing vocabulary one word at a time. They simply express ideas naturally, and their listeners understand those ideas immediately. Professional interpreters work in the same way. Many people imagine that interpreters are translating every single word they hear. It sounds logical, but that is not what actually happens. If interpreters tried to translate one word at a time, they would always be several seconds behind the speaker, and the conversation would quickly become impossible to follow. Instead, interpreters listen for meaning. They pay attention to complete ideas instead of individual words. They hear patterns, expressions, emotions, and context. Their brains are trained to recognize messages instead of isolated vocabulary. This small difference changes everything. Imagine two people listening to the same sentence. The first learner hears 10 separate words. The interpreter hears one complete idea. Who do you think understands faster? Now, here's another interesting question. If interpreters don't translate every word, what exactly are they listening for? That simple secret is the reason they can understand English, even when native speakers talk incredibly fast. And once you understand this secret, your own listening skills can improve much faster than you ever imagined. Let's discover that secret together. The secret professional interpreters use every day. Now let's talk about the secret that makes professional interpreters so good at understanding fast English. Many people believe that interpreters have a special talent or an incredible memory. Some even think they know every English word in the dictionary. While interpreters certainly study very hard, their biggest advantage is not their vocabulary. Their real advantage is the way they listen. Instead of listening for individual words, they listen for complete ideas. This may sound simple, but it completely changes the way your brain processes English. Let's imagine that you are sitting in a meeting. Your manager smiles and says, "I just wanted to touch base before tomorrow's presentation." If you try to translate every word, your brain may become confused. You know the word touch. You know the word base. But what does touch base really mean? Should someone touch a base with their hand? Of course not. Touch base simply means to have a short conversation or to check in with someone. An interpreter doesn't stop to analyze the words touch and base. Instead, the brain immediately recognizes the expression as one complete idea. That is why understanding happens almost instantly. Now, let's look at another example. Imagine that your friend sends you a message saying, "I'm tied up right now. Can we talk later?" Many learners understand the words tied and up, but they still don't understand the sentence. They may imagine someone tied with a rope. However, a native speaker immediately understands the real meaning. "I'm busy." Again, the listener is understanding the message, not translating the individual words. This is exactly how interpreters train their minds. They don't collect isolated vocabulary. They collect useful expressions. Instead of learning one word at a time, they learn groups of words that naturally belong together. These groups are often called chunks. Chunks are everywhere in English, and once you start noticing them, you will hear them again and again. For example, take your time. Sounds good. No worries. I'll be right back. That makes sense. To be honest, at the end of the day, each of these expressions carries a complete meaning. Native speakers don't build them word by word. They remember them as one unit, just as you probably remember common expressions in your own language. Think about how children learn to speak. A child doesn't begin by studying grammar rules or memorizing long vocabulary lists. Instead, children hear the same expressions every day. They hear their parents say things like, "Come here, good job." Be careful. Or, "Let's go." After hearing these phrases hundreds of times, they become automatic. Your English brain can learn in exactly the same way. Now imagine that you walk into a coffee shop. The barista asks, "What can I get started for you today?" If you've never heard this expression before, you may understand every individual word, but still wonder what the question means. However, after hearing it several times, your brain no longer needs to think. You instantly recognize it as another way of saying, "What would you like to order?" This is how fluency grows. Not by translating faster, but by recognizing more patterns. Let's look at another real-life situation. You arrive at the airport, and the airline employee says, "Your flight has been delayed due to weather conditions." If your brain tries to translate every word, you may miss the important information because the sentence is already finished. An interpreter immediately identifies the key message. Flight delayed. The exact grammar is less important than understanding the situation. Professional interpreters are always asking themselves one simple question. What is the speaker trying to say? Notice that they don't ask, "What does every single word mean?" Those are two very different questions. Here's a small exercise you can start today. The next time you watch a short English video, don't pause after every sentence. Instead, ask yourself, what is the main idea? Even if you only understand 60% of the words, you may understand 100% of the message. That is real listening. The more you practice this habit, the less your brain depends on translation. Slowly, English begins to feel more natural because you stop chasing every word and start following the conversation. There is still another reason why native speakers sound so difficult to understand. even if you know the vocabulary, even if you recognize the expressions. English can still sound incredibly fast. Why? Because native speakers often don't pronounce words the way they appear in textbooks. They connect sounds, reduce syllables, and sometimes make several words sound like one long word. This is the next secret that surprises almost every English learner, and once you hear these sound patterns, fast English will never sound the same again. Why native speakers sound so fast, and how to train your ears. Now that you know interpreters focus on ideas instead of individual words, you may still have one important question. If that's true, why do native speakers still sound so incredibly fast? This is one of the biggest mysteries for English learners. The good news is that native speakers are usually not speaking as fast as you think. What makes English sound fast is not only the speed. It is the way the words are connected together. When you learned English in school, you probably learned words one by one. The teacher said, "Good." Then, "Morning." You repeated, "Good morning." Everything was clear. Everything was separate. But when native speakers talk, they almost never pronounce words one by one. Instead, they connect them so smoothly that several words become one natural sound. Imagine pouring drops of water into a glass. At first, you see every single drop. But after a moment, all the drops become one stream. That is exactly what happens in spoken English. Let's look at a simple example. You learned this sentence. What are you doing? When you read it in a textbook, every word is easy to recognize. But listen to how many native speakers actually say it. Whatcha doing? Suddenly, it sounds completely different. The words what, are, and you blend together into one smooth expression. Here's another example. What do you want to do? Many learners expect to hear every word clearly. Instead, they hear something like, "What d'ya wanna do?" The first time you hear this, it almost sounds like a different language. But it isn't. It is exactly the same sentence. The pronunciation has simply become more natural. Let's try another one. I'm going to call her tonight. In a textbook, every word is separate. In real conversation, many people say, "I'm going to call her tonight." Notice that going to becomes gonna. The meaning never changes. Only the pronunciation becomes faster and smoother. Here is another expression that surprises many learners. Did you eat? Many native speakers pronounce it like, "Did you eat?" Or sometimes it sounds almost like, "Jeet." If you have never heard this before, your brain may panic. You think, "I don't know this word." But There isn't a new word. There is only a familiar sentence spoken naturally. This happens every day in English. Let's imagine a real conversation between two coworkers. Emma, hey, are you going to join us for lunch? David, I'd love to, but I'm tied up with a meeting. Emma, no problem. Maybe next time. If you read this conversation slowly, it feels easy. But in real life, it may sound like this. Hey, ya gonna join us for lunch? I'd love to, but I'm tied up with a meeting. No problem. Maybe next time. Notice what happened. Some sounds became softer. Some sounds disappeared. Some words joined together. Native speakers do this naturally because it makes speaking easier and more comfortable. Think about your own language. Do you pronounce every single word perfectly every time you speak? Probably not. Sometimes you shorten words. Sometimes you speak quickly. Sometimes you connect sounds without even noticing it. English works exactly the same way. This means you don't need to fear connected speech. You need to become familiar with it. The more often you hear these patterns, the more normal they will sound. This is one of the biggest differences between beginners and advanced learners. Beginners hear random sounds. Advanced learners hear familiar patterns. Professional interpreters train this skill every single day. They spend hours listening to authentic English, not because they enjoy struggling, but because every hour helps their brains recognize another pattern. Over time, their ears stop asking, "What word was that?" Instead, they ask, "What does the speaker mean?" That simple change makes listening much easier. So, how can you train your ears the same way? The answer is surprisingly simple. First, choose a short audio clip about 30 seconds to 1 minute long. Don't start with a 2-hour movie. Short clips are much more effective because you can listen to them many times. The first time, just listen. Don't pause. Don't look at subtitles. Don't worry if you understand only a few words. Your goal is not to understand everything. Your goal is to become familiar with the rhythm of English. The second time, turn on the subtitles. Now compare what you hear with what you read. You will probably notice something interesting. The words are much easier to recognize when you can see them. This helps your brain connect pronunciation with spelling. The third time, listen again without reading. You'll be surprised that you suddenly understand much more than you did the first time. Nothing changed in the audio. The only thing that changed was your brain. Now comes the exercise that interpreters and language experts recommend most. It is called shadowing. Shadowing means speaking at exactly the same time as the speaker. Don't wait until the sentence is finished. Don't translate. Simply copy what you hear immediately. Copy the pronunciation. Copy the rhythm. Copy the pauses. Copy the emotion. At first, this feels difficult. You may miss words. You may speak too slowly. You may even laugh at yourself. That's completely normal. Every interpreter was once a beginner. Every fluent English speaker made thousands of mistakes while learning. The important thing is to keep going. Little by little, your ears become sharper. Your pronunciation becomes more natural. Your confidence grows. And one day, you'll notice something amazing. A conversation that once sounded impossibly fast suddenly feels comfortable. Not because people started speaking more slowly, but because your brain finally learned how English really sounds. Now that you know how interpreters train their listening, there is one final piece of the puzzle. How can you practice this method every day without spending hours studying? In the final part of this lesson, I'll show you a simple 15-minute daily routine that can completely change the way you understand English over the next few months. The 15-minute daily routine that can change your listening forever. Now you know the biggest secret. Professional interpreters do not understand fast English because they are born with a special gift. They understand because they have trained their brains to listen differently. Instead of translating every word, they listen for meaning. Instead of memorizing random vocabulary, they recognize useful expressions. Instead of worrying about perfect grammar, they focus on understanding the message. The exciting part is that you can train your brain in exactly the same way. You don't need expensive courses. You don't need to study for 5 hours every day. And you certainly don't need to know every word in the dictionary. What you need is a simple habit that you can repeat every day. Let me show you a routine that takes only 15 minutes, but can completely change the way you understand spoken English. Step 1. Listen without trying to be perfect. Choose a short video, a podcast, or even a conversation that is about 1 minute long. The first time you listen, don't pause the audio. Don't look at subtitles. Don't grab a dictionary. And most importantly, don't panic if you understand only a small part of it. Many learners believe they should understand every single word. That belief actually slows down their progress. Instead, ask yourself one simple question. What is the speaker talking about? Maybe the conversation is about a meeting. Maybe it is about ordering coffee. Maybe it is about someone's weekend. Even if you understand only the main idea, you are already listening the right way. Remember, communication is about understanding messages, not collecting every word. Step 2. Learn the patterns. Now play the same audio again. This time, turn on the subtitles. Read and listen at the same time. Pay attention to the expressions that native speakers use naturally. Notice how words connect together. Notice how some sounds disappear. Notice how one expression can communicate an entire idea. Instead of writing down 20 new words, choose only 3 useful expressions. For example, I'll figure it out. That sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. These are expressions you will hear again and again. When you learn English in meaningful chunks like these, your brain begins to recognize them automatically during future conversations. That is exactly how fluent listeners develop their skills. Step 3. Shadow like an interpreter. Now comes the most powerful exercise. Play the audio one more time. As the speaker talks, speak at exactly the same time. Don't wait. Don't translate. Just copy everything you hear. Copy the pronunciation. Copy the rhythm. Copy the pauses. Even copy the speaker's emotion. If the speaker sounds excited, sound excited. If the speaker sounds calm, sound calm. First, you may feel uncomfortable. You may miss words. You may speak more slowly. You may even think, I sound terrible. That's perfectly normal. Every fluent English speaker sounded like a beginner at some point. The difference is that they kept practicing. Every day your mouth becomes more comfortable producing English sounds. Every day your ears become more familiar with natural pronunciation. And little by little, your confidence begins to grow. The secret is consistency. Many learners study English for 3 hours on Saturday and then do nothing for the rest of the week. Unfortunately, our brains don't learn languages that way. Learning a language is much like going to the gym. One very long workout cannot replace many short workouts. Imagine watering a plant. If you give it 100 liters of water today, but nothing for the next month, the plant won't grow well. Languages work in the same way. 15 focused minutes every day are far more powerful than several hours once a week. Small daily progress creates big long-term results. What can you expect? Let's be realistic. After one day, you probably won't notice much difference. After 1 week, you may begin recognizing a few familiar expressions. After 1 month, you'll start noticing that conversations don't feel as overwhelming as before. After 2 or 3 months of consistent practice, something wonderful begins to happen. Instead of hearing one long stream of confusing sounds, Your brain naturally separates English into meaningful ideas. Expressions that once sounded impossible suddenly become familiar. Movies become easier to enjoy. Podcasts become less frustrating. Conversations become less stressful. And perhaps the biggest surprise of all is this: native speakers don't actually seem slower. You simply become faster at understanding them. One more thing. Please don't compare yourself to someone who has been learning English for 10 years. Compare yourself to the person you were yesterday. Maybe yesterday you understood only 10% of a conversation. Today you understand 15%. That is progress. Maybe last month you were afraid to watch English videos without subtitles. Today you can understand the general idea. That is progress too. Every sentence you understand is another brick in the foundation of your English. Every conversation you finish is another step forward. Every mistake teaches your brain something valuable. Fluency is not built in one amazing day. It is built through hundreds of ordinary days when you choose to practice instead of giving up. Final thoughts. So, let's remember the most important lessons from today's video. Fast English is not your enemy. Your brain simply needs a better listening strategy. Stop translating every single word. Start listening for complete ideas. Learn useful chunks instead of isolated vocabulary. Listen to real English every day. Practice shadowing regularly. Be patient with yourself because improvement takes time. If you keep following these simple habits, one day you'll realize something incredible. The conversations that once sounded impossible will begin to sound natural. The movies that once required subtitles will become enjoyable. The confidence you have been searching for will finally become part of your everyday English. And when that day comes, you'll discover the real secret that every professional interpreter already knows. Fluent listening is not about hearing more words. It is about understanding more meaning. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. If you enjoyed this lesson and found it helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more simple English lessons and real-life learning tips. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What is the hardest part of listening to English for you? Is it fast pronunciation, new vocabulary, different accents, or is it something else? Share your answer in the comments below, because your question might inspire our next lesson. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and remember, every day you practice English is one more day closer to fluency. See you in the next video.